Welcome, everybody, to another episode of From Adversity to Abundance podcast. I am your host, Jamie Bateman, and I'm very excited today. We have a special guest on with us, AJ Osborne. AJ, how are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So AJ runs Cedar Creek Wealth, and self-storage income, among other couple of podcasts and a bunch of other things. So I just mentioned to you before we hit record how I kind of follow you on Twitter, and I listened to a recent podcast that you were on, and I was so inspired by your story that I was like, I've got to reach out to that guy. So I really do thank you for coming on. I know you're very busy. So for our audience who is a little bit less familiar with you, can you let us know kind of who you are and what you're up to today?
Yeah, 100%. So, my main business and what most people know me from is self-storage. So I wrote the best-selling book in the industry, as well as have the largest podcast in the industry, where I talk all about self-storage. I've been in the space since 2004. I've owned several other businesses. I've started up several companies. I've got started in insurance, but we own, operate, manage over 2 million net rentable square feet across 10 states. We are fully integrated. Everything. We own the tech stack within our company, property management systems, which the tech company is based out of California. I'm based out of Idaho. But I also founding member of the largest co-op in self-storage. We have, I can't remember how many facilities are even under us now in the co-op. We were pioneers in space like automation, where we connected physical assets to software, installing ability to do what we would call true automation, keyless technology. And we're pioneering the software space to try to really revolutionize that in the industry and take it away through our technology companies. So I've been in the space for a long time. It's it's kind of my thing. I love it. It's amazing, and man, has it changed.
Well, we were talking a little bit about that before we hit record. Self-storage is a very popular space to be in now, and for good reason, of course. And this is certainly not a knock on any self-storage investors, at least for me. You can knock them if you want, but it seems like in the last 4 or 5 years, I don't know how many operators have popped up, and I'm sure there's still room for growth. You can speak to that much better than I can, but the fact that you've been in the space is just, it really says something about I think you're going to bring a unique element to this episode, whereas somebody who just started in self-storage or just bought one facility last week may not be able to speak to kind of economic changes, market conditions, and different states. You mentioned 10 states. So the fact that you have that vast experience is awesome. And you don't just do self-storage. You mentioned all the ancillary businesses and everything else. So yeah, anything else you want to mention on the kind of current context before we get into your backstory?
No, I mean, I've done online businesses, benefits consulting firms. I've started, that's kind of where I got my space. I've started more. And it is an interesting landscape. And I think you're right in self-storage. And I don't knock on anybody that's in the space, because you got to start sometime. But you're right. Most people in self-storage that anybody even knows about, they've only been around in the last 5 years. And it's been the best 5 years in the storage industry's history by far. Like, it's crazy. COVID really helped. And I think that has really shaped like that content. Like, you can even feel, right? You hear it and you feel it around storage, where it's palpable and it's a shiny object, and it seems like all these people are just making so much money, and
Yeah.
It makes for a very interesting environment that never existed before. And I think you're right, it lacks a lot of context. And no matter what business I've started investing in or anything, I try to be level-headed. I try not to be a cheerleader, which is funny because I am the largest podcast and the largest selling book in the space. But
Yeah.
I try not to be. I try to say, listen, the idea here is that we're gaining financial independence and freedom, and that self-storage is a vehicle, but
Right.
it is this isn't rolling the dice. This isn't this, and self-storage has changed. A lot of people aren't aware of it, which makes them, I think, really unaware of the risks, but also unaware of their ability to take advantage of the industry. And I think that's a social thing that happens within economics, right? We get hyped up, people get feverish, and they start, it's just like you feel like you can't win or you can't lose. And then it goes the other way where people are like, this asset's over and it's done. And neither one of those extremes are true at all.
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah, absolutely. No, I'd like to get your thoughts later on where we're potentially headed. No one knows for sure, but um, that's yeah, it's definitely one of those in the last, I guess I'll say 6, 7 years ago when I was really kind of looking at different asset classes outside of single family homes. And it was self-storage, mobile home parks, and maybe senior living seemed to be kind of like the three, other than just the blanket multifamily that everyone seems to be on too. But so yeah, I'd like to get to that later. But for now, let's dive into your backstory. Of course, we don't have time to cover every detail of your life, but I was absolutely moved, like I said, when I heard you on another show regarding specifically your health challenges that you've faced. And I know you've been very open about this stuff on Twitter and different, I think, different websites and things. So I appreciate that. I think it's just helpful for our listeners when the guest is willing to be vulnerable. I mean, and just relatable and human. And this is not an episode to get into how to do self-storage or what's coming. This isn't a financial, we're not giving investment advice or anything like that. This is more focused on, look, we're all human. We all face challenges, and but that doesn't have to stop you. So yeah, you can pick it up where you'd like to, as far as the health challenges. And again, people can, if they really want to dive into it, there are other resources out there. But yeah, where do you want to start with that?
Yeah. So, honestly, this is probably what I've become most known for. Very unique circumstances, and I try not to hold anything back. I try to talk openly about it, and I think that it's good to. I wish more people would, because I think that we see people on top, and you say you're winning the game right now, and that makes it's because you're either perfect or you have everything going. Maybe I'm wrong. At least that's what I did. So you know what I mean? It was like,
Yeah.
you're killing it, and if like, must be nice. Oh, must be nice if I had that ability, or I had that, right? Which I'd kind of gotten some of a lot of that too. And the reality is that that I know of, and never seen a path that isn't without major adversity. And sometimes it takes major life-changing adversity to make life-changing moves. And unfortunately, that's, a lot of times that's not in the way you want it to. It definitely wasn't for me.
Yeah.
And it was definitely unexpected. The short story, real quick, and then I can kind of
Yeah.
go into it more. But almost overnight, perfectly healthy, 33. I think it was 33. I'm 38 now, and I was bagpacker, I was a fly fisherman, working full time for a brokerage firm. As I was health insurance brokerage company. We manage health benefit dollars as I was building my real estate empire, and I had just had our fourth child. I didn't, my wife did, but we had just had our fourth child.
Got it.
I'm definitely not taking claim to that. But we just had our fourth child. He was 3 months, and we were running around traveling, and I became basically a quadriplegic overnight. I wasn't due to an accident. We didn't know what was going on. So for the first couple of days, I had gotten into the bathtub because my legs were killing me. I was in a lot of pain. And I went to get out. Wife's putting kids to bed, everything like that. Went to get out and I couldn't move my legs. My legs stopped working. She had somebody else grab the kids, take care of the kids. She rushed me to the hospital. And within days, I didn't ever really say goodbye to the kids or anything. And within days, I was being put into a coma. And when I woke out of the coma, I was on complete life support. So I couldn't do anything, talk, nothing. And I was hooked to tubes that were keeping me alive. And I laid there for over 2 months. Then I finally got off the tubes after that, meaning I could breathe on my own. And then I started to learn how to do everything again, use my hands, walk. I mean, walk came way later, but occupational therapy, eat, drink, everything.
Wow.
And that I was fired in the hospital. So not fired, I guess you could say let go, because there was no expiration date. I was not leaving the hospital. Nobody knew when. We had a 2-month period of time that we didn't know if I ever would leave, if we were just going to flip the switch and end it, because I wasn't moving. There was nothing was happening for me. And the whole time during this, I was in incredible amounts of pain. My nervous system had been completely shredded apart and destroyed. So according to my brain, every piece of my body had been ripped to shreds. So I didn't sleep for weeks. The only way I slept is I would pass out. So my body would just shut down, and then I would sleep for a little bit and then wake right back up to intense searing pain that they couldn't stop. No matter how much meds they gave. In fact, my wife at once was just like, you have to give him more meds. And they're like, if we give him any more, we're going to kill him. They're like, if we gave you what he was on right now, you would die within like a minute. It'd kill you. And so they're just like, we can't. There's nothing more we can do. They couldn't stop it. And so I'd lost my job. I was paralyzed now, 33, 4 kids. She's had an infant. I didn't get to see my kids for a long time because they didn't know what to do. They were like, we don't know what to tell the kids, right? It's like, what do we tell the kids? So it was like, Dad's sick, but we don't have answers.
So they didn't know what your condition was or at all?
So they figured it out after a few days, but they didn't have an outcome. So there was no way to fix it, right? There's nothing they could do. So it was like, we're going to put him on tubes and keep him alive. And if his body can come back, it can come back. But there's no one knows. So it was one of those periods where you're like, do you bring the kids in and tell them Dad's going to be okay or not when you don't know? So we waited for a month, and then finally it was like, you just have to bring them in, and you have to show them, and you have to tell them, and you have to try to work that with the kids that this is Dad now, and we're going to figure this out. We think he's going to get better. We hope he'll get better, right? But so I went a month without seeing my children except for my baby, who would lie next to me because I could move my lips, right? So I could play with him moving my lips and giving him little kisses and things like that. So they just lay him on the pillow, and that was the highlight of everything. I don't know what I would have done without that kid. Like, I mean, just every time I just look and wait in the hospital for that kid to come in. He was the only little bit of joy I had. But from there, my brother actually moved from Hawaii, moved in basically to the hospital, stayed with me every single night because I was suffering from something that was called ICU delirium, which would give me mass hallucinations. There was no windows. I'd lost my senses. So my mind would struggle to find grips with reality of where I was. Cause like, I didn't know, like you're lying in a bed completely paralyzed. So all the senses that you have are gone. So the brain starts to struggle. And because you're in a room for so long,
you have no context of where like relationships, where things are, where the parking lot is or whatever else. I mean,
I didn't know where I was. Time lost all meaning. I thought I'd been there for years. And so they'd stay with me by my side. And my brother, when I'd move into more of that delusional state and hysteria, he would be there to try to bring me back and try to, get me back on. And so we did that for a while. And then from there, was in a rehab facility, and they were working with me to learn how to get on and off my wheelchair, and how to try to make it so I could function not being in the hospital. And after that, they sent me home paralyzed, and that was it. There was nothing else. It was go home. Here's the meds to try to make the pain not be as bad, but nothing else to do.
There's so many ways we could go with this, so many questions. I just obviously can't fully relate, but, and so this was only 5 years ago. Is that what you said?
Yeah. So this was 5 years ago. I'm still partially paralyzed in my lower legs. I still have 24/7 pain. And my lower legs don't function correctly. I can't run. I can't, do things like that. They don't quite work like that. But, I'm walking, which was more than we expected. So we could not be happier, obviously, with where I'm at. I'm sitting here and talking to you. Yeah. I can walk, I can hold my kids. I can, get in the pool with them, and I'll deal with all the other problems because they're just minute compared to where we were.
Mm-hmm. So in the context, so you had a full-time job, but you also you obviously had been in self-storage and many other things. Just from an investment standpoint, what else did you have, or small business standpoint, what else did you have going on at that time?
So at the time, it was my self-storage company and my job, and that was it. After I lost my job, I expanded my self-storage empire, and I started a couple of businesses out of my wheelchair.
And those were self-storage related, I guess?
One of them was an online company. Another one was a benefits brokerage company. And then another one was a private equity company. So 3.
So, wow. Now, do you want to say what your condition is, or what caused it?
Yeah. So, it's Guillain-Barré. Guillain-Barré's a white blood cell problem. So normally, Guillain-Barré is much more mild, I think, than I was the worst of the worst case scenario you could have.
Outlier right? Case.
Yep, I was outlier, and so I tell my wife, everything I do big. So you shouldn't have been.
Why are you surprised?
Par for the course. I'm like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. Like, so
that's hilarious.
That's awesome. Right. So
you got to find some humor in it. That's awesome.
Exactly.
Okay, so and that was
it's not a disease. It's not something that you catch or anything else like that. Everybody has it. It's just because it's not anything. So it's kind of weird even trying to explain it, because it's not like it's something. It's not like a disease that you have. It's not a problem. What happens is you have a trigger, and something happens within the body. Those white blood cells get massively confused, and they think that this outlier that came in, they get it confused with your central nervous system. So then your body produces white blood cells at extreme amounts, like just mass amounts of white blood cells. And then the white blood cells rip your nervous system to bits and sever your brain from your body.
And I know, because you went into a lot more detail in I guess it was the Tribe of Millionaires podcast a couple of months ago that came out, probably will be 4 or 5 months ago once this airs. So if people want to listen to that show, I mean, you go into a lot of detail about what caused the condition, which was vaccine related, right? Not COVID vaccine. And I remember you talked about, the whole controversy with COVID vaccines and all that. And so, but it sounds like this was most likely caused by a whole bunch of vaccines that were given to you before an international trip, right?
Yep, I was headed to Brazil, and that's Guillain-Barré. The number one trigger is the flu vaccine and the COVID vaccine. Mine wasn't either one of those. So this was prior to COVID, and it wasn't the flu vaccine. It was actually the MMR. So I don't know how many people just shut off your podcast. So sorry about that. For some reason, I became
No,
very controversial in the last
yeah,
like
there's
2 years, and I'm like, I didn't do it. I'm sorry, but and so it's
no.
interesting effect on that has on people when they get
Well, we're just
upset by
speaking
me.
about what happened to you and the facts,
Exactly.
and the
So
thing is,
I was
and I
traveling to
know you.
Brazil to go fly fishing, and so I just had to get updated on my MMRs. And I used
Mhm,
to live in Brazil, so I'd already had it, and I didn't have anything happen.
mhm.
So I'd already been fully vaxxed
Like
before. I'd already had
immunized.
the MMRs and everything
Yeah.
else. It was my 10-year time. I had to get a redone, and it was at that time I'd received that, and then that's what happened. That's actually how they diagnosed. That's how they figured out what was going on.
That's just wild. I mean, it's just, I mean, it probably means nothing, but I'm very sorry that you've had to deal with all of this.
I
You
appreciate
know,
this.
and again, this is, I remember you saying you're not anti-vaccine and COVID
No,
vaccine or anything like that. So this is not meant to be a controversial take. It's just, I mean, I think just having
it's
more
the reality.
information, the reality. And so
I
now
think
it's,
when you
go ahead.
look at it, it goes back to what I was even talking about self storage and everything. People are too
Mhm.
extreme. It,
Right.
it like it's you got to understand we have gray areas, and I would suggest everybody um, don't be so harsh on these subjects and understand there's area. At the end of the day, there's right around roughly 3% of everyone that takes a vaccine they're going to be in trouble. They're going
Mhm.
to die. They're going to end up like me. They're going to have issues. That's not controversial.
Mhm.
That's facts.
Right.
That's
Right.
numbers. We accept that as society. Like I tell people, I'm happy to have what happened to me so my kids don't have polio. I'm fine with
Sure.
that. I'm okay to take
Right.
that fall for society, but
Mhm.
it's ridiculous that people don't accept the people that take that fall. They are. I mean, we accept, and I accept a lot of things.
Right.
I accept things like guns. I accept things like I.
Sure.
We have risks in this world that I accept, and I'm one of them. And
Right.
you should realize that. And instead of like being upset by it or anything else like that, we should be grateful for people that have to go through those challenges so that we can.
Yeah.
The COVID vaccine is not perfectly safe. Am I grateful that my dad isn't going to die of COVID because he got the shot? Yes. Did I give it to my kids? No. There's gray area people. And it's like we need to be
Yeah.
accepting of that. And I think that's part of adversity. Like when you go through adversity, when you're
Mhm.
doing it, people should be open to understanding that adversity that you went through, that they didn't go through, so we can have understanding, that we can pull things from it that are tangible, that are real, that we can utilize in our life. I'm not talking about vaccines, I'm talking about all adversities.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
to be staunch about certain things is not an educated or an intelligent way to go about life.
No, absolutely. I've definitely learned that more and more as I've gotten older myself. Just there's a lot of gray in the world. It's great to have principles and the things you can rely on.
Yeah,
That's we need that standards, but not everything's black and
100%.
white.
Not everything's
Um, so when let's get to your. Of course, it was. I mean, we have people on the show who kind of maybe created their own adversity through some bad choices, and then maybe it took a long
I've done that
time.
plenty of times too.
Yeah. Mark Owen's our first episode. This guy was, it's a phenomenal episode. He was on drugs, like illegal drugs, selling drugs, robbing banks. I mean, this was way years ago. And then he completely changed his life around, turned his life around, became a real estate investor, and now is financially free. Incredible story. But he had a lot to do with, his own adversity
Yeah.
happening to him. In this case, I mean, it kind of just happened to you, and I'm sure you've made bad choices, like you just said, but it's just
Yeah,
this
I
is
didn't have anything really to do with this.
yeah, and it
I didn't have a
was
choice.
right,
So,
and it was instantaneous, pretty much too. I
yeah.
mean, just and then the fact that you lost your job.
Nobody
I
even
mean,
knew where I
just
went. My office, literally, everybody was like, "Where's AJ?" And on Monday, and nobody could talk about it or tell her or say anything. And it was all of a sudden, I just evaporated from the face of the earth. I was
that
gone,
is
and
crazy.
nobody
So
knew what was happening. They're like, "Why can't we get a hold of AJ?" I mean, it was like when we say flip a light switch. It was not only one day or am I normal? I'm 4 kids. I'm a high performer. I
Right.
am I'm outdoorsy. I
Right.
work out every day to evaporating from the face of the earth, but not dead.
That is so. Now, of course, there's been, I'm sure many different, kind of aha moments or transitional periods over the last 5 years. But what would you say has helped you get through this? You mentioned your youngest son spending time there, and obviously your brother and your wife you've already mentioned as well. But uh, as far as mindset, let's go there first. What would you
Yeah,
say are
let
kind
me
of the
let me share with you. This is the clearest distinction. I was sitting in the hospital and I was in a wheelchair, and I don't like to blame other people, and I don't like to I just in no way, shape, or form am I like I want to sue the companies and how could they do this to me? And I think first of all, the number one thing is we have to, even in adversity, remain very pragmatic. And the idea that nothing bad should happen to me is so egotistical, it's mind baffling. So
Mhm.
to lash out because bad things happen has nothing to do with the bad things, but more to you. And I
Yeah.
mean that sincerely and not as in a dismissive way, because trust me, I know things are horrific and trials in life can be horrible. What I mean by that is you shouldn't go through life with the expectation that that won't happen. We are all going to die, and dying is not fun. I hear that from a lot of people. Dying's not fun, and that's just part of life, right? So I think that, and this is really easy to say, but it's really
Right.
hard to do. and
Right.
and to give you context, it's not like when I was going through it I was happy. I was
Right.
very upset at my family that they were keeping me alive. I did not understand
Hmm.
why they would not let me die. It
Wow.
was far worse than death what I was going through,
Hmm.
and they were doing me a massive injustice by keeping me alive.
Hmm.
And they knew that, and they knew we were only going to torture him for so long, and then we're going to pull the plug and let him die. And so it was not something that is like, oh yeah, I got better, and he's like, oh no, 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 no. I begged, screamed in my head, and prayed every day to die. And
Wow.
so when you go through things like this, first of all, there are things that are so much farther worse than death, divorce, bankruptcy, many of the things that we face today. And I became a little less, I became way sympathetic on one side, but I became a lot less sympathetic to a lot of the struggles that I use air quotation, that we go
Mhm.
through right now. We
Yeah.
are in the greatest country that is the highest, we
Yeah.
are so spoiled,
Right.
all of us.
Absolutely.
Me, I'm so spoiled, right? And that's okay as long as we recognize it. And so I think we have to go about a mindset of mental toughness that
Hmm.
is not saying it's not there. I bawled today. I get exhausted. I fall down even today. I just want to end up in tears. Mental toughness isn't that you're not showing emotions. It's not that you're crying, right?
Right.
It's that you keep up getting up and going, and that you don't become a horrible human being because adversity turns you into it.
Right.
Now, this is really tough, and this is not easy, and this is not something, but it is part of life. And I see so many people that we go through life, and we have things that today I would never even call adversity, and they become horrible human beings due to what are very mild things,
Yeah.
that even though I understand when they're going through it, it's horrific. Just like what I went through, it was horrific. We mentioned this before. Like
Right.
trauma and problems, like our brain can't segment. Like I hear people and they're like, oh yeah, I broke both of my legs once and I was in a wheelchair for 3 months, but I don't want to talk about it because it's nothing like you. And I'm like, it's exactly like me. You had massive adversity, you were in pain, right? And it's like, and to me, honestly, I think probably if I got a divorce, that would be harder than what I went through. It's like our brain has a really hard time distinguishing when it hurts, when it's a problem, it
Mhm.
feels like it's the end of the world
Right.
every time.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if it's small or big. It's
Sure.
horrible.
So you were so 2 months in the wheelchair, you said, or or two
Two,
two
no,
months
I
where
was
you were in the
over
bed
2 months on tubes.
on tubes, and then how long in a wheelchair?
Um, Over the next 3 years, I was in and out of a wheelchair, leg braces, and arm crutches to move and to walk.
And
And
again,
then,
this is not meant to, bring back pain. It's just to give
no,
more
I'm fine
context.
with it. Yeah.
Um,
I'm
so
okay digging into the pain. So, I mean, you got to understand, I laid naked in bed, hooked to tubes, doing nothing. They would roll me on my side to bathe me for months. Like, I have no pride anymore on that kind of stuff. Like, it's just like, it is what it is. And
yeah.
I think we should lean into it, and we should talk about pain,
Mhm.
and we should talk about the reality of life instead of hiding away from it. And too often we want to be dismissive of these things, and we shouldn't.
So how did you get from, that wanting to die to deciding you wanted to create two businesses, from your wheelchair? I mean, there's obviously,
Yeah.
talk us through
So
that progression.
in the hospital, I knew I was going to leave. I was in rehab, and I was sitting in my wheelchair looking outside out the window. I was very happy to be in rehab and in a wheelchair at this point, because that meant I had freedom. Like, it is hard to, it's hard for someone to understand what a wheelchair means to somebody that can't walk. The freedom to be able to go to use the bathroom is incredible.
Yeah.
And I was like, we got involved in a charity where we take wheelchairs to people in third world countries that don't have it, because it was just like, holy cow,
Yeah.
that wheelchair was amazing.
So I can relate to that on some level. And I mentioned to you before we hit record, and I bring this up way too much, but ruptured my Achilles last year, not the end of the world, right? But man, well, you do, but many people, I had no idea how much I would care for my knee scooter, or appreciate my knee
Yeah.
scooter. And I joked with my wife, I was closer to that thing than I
Yeah.
was with her.
Yep.
But anyway, I mean, so much freedom. And the fact, and then I got a basket on the front, and then I could actually use my hands. I didn't have to carry things with my hands. I could put things in the basket. It was incredible.
It's incredible.
Amazing.
Like, amazing. Like, and it's weird to talk about and think about this, but when you're in these situations, and for me, the littlest things became so amazing to me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the first time I drank water, like, we have videos of the first time that I eat, and they're helping me put this watermelon up to my mouth as I'm trying to learn, how to eat again. And I take a bite and I eat, and I don't choke and die. And everybody cheers. The whole room's cheering. And I'm looking around like I'm a 3-year-old that, you know what I mean? And it was, I'm proud of it. I still am, and it's like, it's so dumb and so little, but like you're saying, it is awesome. Amazing. And so when I was in my wheelchair and I'm looking outside, I think what really happened was I was trying to be very conscientious. These things we're talking about, I tried to lean into it, not avoid. I didn't want to sit and I didn't want to stew. And I said, we got to think this through, AJ, because we all know you're screwed up right now. Like, there's no way you wouldn't be there. We're screwed up. And I was in, I handled it, I think, very well. And they were very concerned with, because people after my position, suicide rate, death rate, physical harm to others is extraordinarily high. So you have to go through a lot before they'll release you of these counseling therapy stuff, so they can release you on your own. And I was going through that. And I think it was probably the day that they were doing that. And the first question they asked me was, do you want to kill your wife? And I looked up and I was like, excuse me? And she looked at me and she said, do you want to kill your wife? And I was like, oh my gosh, no. Like, are you kidding me? She's like my savior over here, right? We're obviously alone in the room. Then the next question was, do you want to kill your children? And it was so extreme and it was so shocking to me. But what was more extreme and shocking was how 100% serious she was and how concerned she was about it. And after she left, and after I'd gone through these questions, and this was one of many to come, I'm looking out the window at my wheelchair and I'm like, AJ, this is, you are going to become this person. You are either going to become AJ in the wheelchair, or you're going to become AJ something else. And I don't mean AJ in the wheelchair as in you can't walk. I was fine not walking. I was fine staying in my wheelchair. I meant that I identified as that. This became me, and it ruined me to the core. And it was right there. I go, you have two choices. That's it. This is so extreme. There's only two ways to look at this. You are going to become that guy. You are going to not be able to hold a job. You're going to be addicted to drugs. you're going to be sitting in a wheelchair and you're going to lose your family and your kids because you can't deal with this, you can't move forward. Or you're going to become somebody else. And it's not who you were before. It's not who you are now. You don't know who it is, but you'll become. And those are the only two options that you have. And I just said right there, I won't become that guy. And then everything evolved around this future AJ and who he was and how he lived and how he treated his kids and you know what he did for others. And I think that set me on a path of such incredible gratitude and almost obsessive compulsiveness about being someone but that person, that I went on overdrive. And I started starting companies, and I started, you know, nonprofits, and I work harder than, I had the biggest excuse in the world to not work, and I work harder than, you know, my employees here are just like, it's crazy. Nobody can keep up with you. And they're like, we don't understand it. You have a bag full of meds that you literally carry around with you, and you can hardly walk, and we can't even keep up. And I'm like, if only you were at where I was, you would know why. So it's a choice though. And I think we can make it. And that's why too, I think that what happened to me was for the better. I wouldn't take it away. I'm a better person because of it, because I learned how to make that choice, and that fades away. So like, it's even now 5 years later, it's really hard. Like, I'm building a house and I'm getting frustrated. I'm getting really upset over things that don't matter. And I sit back and I'm like, you're going back to that guy. You're becoming somebody that you should have left behind. This doesn't matter, right? And it's something that I have to continually, and this is why I think I love talking about it, because like, it's reminding me right now, AJ, it's like, do better, be more, be better. Remember how it was.
Yeah. Well, I'm not even going to charge you for this therapy session. So
thank you. I appreciate
that.
Kind this is very helpful. So very helpful.
So, I mean, that's just like, I mean, there's so many, that's just, your story is incredible. And that, so you made that decision and then started multiple companies afterwards. Wow. I mean,
my wife started a school and a nonprofit that teaches kids about the real world, about economy, finances. It talks about, we talk a lot about emotional and intelligence and building confidence and changing your surroundings. And the school exploded, and she's got hundreds of kids. We have a whole new campus. It's a nonprofit.
That's awesome. What's it called?
It's called Innovate Academy. So she started that after I got out of the hospital. It was, our tolerance for things that we didn't like was at an all-time low, but our complaining also hit an all-time low, as in, if our tolerance is nothing and we're not doing something about it, we just need to shut up, or we need to do something about it. And we shouldn't let other people do things we shouldn't expect other people to change things that we need to be changed. And so even it changed her so much. She did this.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. You guys took, you know, easy for me to say, right? But you took ownership, you took responsibility, you became the change you wanted to see in the world. It sounds like that's what I think, like, all you can do, like, that's the number one thing you got to take away from this. It's like, okay, I'm a dyslexic kid that's ADHD that is now partially paralyzed. And it's like, I can't, you know, I have to deal with all this crap in my life. I have 4 kids. I have 80 plus employees, and we have hard days. It sucks. I don't know why we're doing what we're doing. I get tired to the ends. And the point is you just make the choice to go do it. And it's like, everybody has that choice, every single person. And it's not that it's executed perfectly. Oh no, we screw up so much. We mess up so much. It's about doing it. And I hope that my kids feel that. I hope that that's what people learn. It's not about me. It's not about necessarily what I'm doing. I hope my kids say, okay, we know that we can. It's never going to be easy. And I think that was maybe one of the good things about being paralyzed and always being in pain. This idea that it should be easy or even fun, that evaporated from my life. I haven't woken up in over 5 years that was not because I was in pain. It hasn't happened. So every day to me is just an acceptance
of I'm going to be in pain. This is going to hurt. So then all of a sudden it became, does it matter? No, it really doesn't, because it's the same. And I wish I would have learned that without becoming paralyzed. That would have
Sure.
been so much easier to do.
Right.
Like, I mean, but
Yeah. Well, I will say, just having done a bunch of shows now, a bunch of episodes for this show, one of the common themes is that it's not about you, and I don't mean you personally, but
yeah,
just, that's where people get to who have been through some extreme adversity, is it's about others and serving
yes,
a greater purpose and being a part of something bigger than yourself. Otherwise,
100%.
although it's, you need to go through that phase where you're focused on the pain and you're leaning into it and you're focused on your condition. At some point, what are you going to do about it? And it's you just got to look, I'll say higher, or at some
Yeah.
bigger purpose. And so that's been one of the themes through the show, which has been, just driven home through with each guest.
I love it. And I think honestly, me and my family, we're happier than we were before. I'm in pain every day and I'm happier than I was before. And it's like, there was a study done by, okay, I'm going to say it was in the 1970s, and it's called Mouse Utopia. You heard of this?
Okay.
So
Not sure.
So what they did in the 1970s, and you can look it up. I can't remember the guy's name. It's like
Yeah.
Steinberg or something like that. Of course, right? Of
Okay.
course, like some German name. But
Right.
the mice. What he does is he creates a mice utopia, and he puts 5 females, 5 males into an area where they have all the bedding that they need. There's no predators. They're never exposed to predators. They have
John Calhoun, 1960s Mouse Utopia, right?
That's right. And
Okay.
1960s. And they give all the food that these mice could ever want, right? And so there's no adversity to these mice at all. Nothing. At first, the mice flourish. They're healthy. They're having babies. They're doing a great job. And long story short, by the end of this is over a long period of time, but like once it gets into multiple, they're killing each other. Their mice, they stop mating. The males retreat and become recluses. They get diseases. Their social fabric of the mice completely break down. They start eating like the babies. And it, like any normal thing that you would ever see, is gone. It's out the window.
Wow.
And they found that the moment you took away all the restraints of the heart, that you actually took away death for these guys. I mean, you actually took away problems. They went extinct. The mouse colony went extinct without adversity.
Right.
Not only could they not thrive, they died off.
Wow.
And so they got to 60 mice. The whole entire thing could hold, it was like over 100. They never reached peak capacity. They never reached everything until they started deteriorating, and it all went away. And that's true with life. Right. If you're too comfortable, you're not going to be happy. And that's such contrary things that we have in our minds that is so hard to come to grips with, because our minds are set on one thing only: comfort. I need more food. I don't want to be in the sun. I need to survive, right? Sure. Like I need to stay away from danger. I need to be comfortable. And in comfort, we find peace and things like that in those moments. But if you take away and it's only comfortable, and I think that has a lot to do with what we see in society today, what's going on.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, and I think it goes back to what you said before about either extreme. Comfort, you need comfort, right? You need safety.
Yeah, you need to survive. You don't want to be cavemen all dying.
Right. So, but the extreme of comfort 100% is not good either. So we're running a little short on time, and I know you have 80 employees. I think you have a couple things you probably got to get to. I'm going to fire off a few questions here, and then we'll wrap it up.
Do it.
What would you say? What do people misunderstand about you?
Oh, geez. Holy cow, man. You got good questions.
We can skip it if you want.
Yeah, I'm going to have to think about that one. That's a great question. All
right, let's do this. If you could have coffee with any historical figure, who would it be?
Okay, coffee with any historical figure.
Can be a present day person or past?
Yeah. So wow. I can think of presidents. I can think of Teddy Roosevelt, Abraham Lincoln, obviously George Washington. But then too, I can also think of more, like Jesus Christ as he went through his life, what that looked like. I mean, uh, Buddha. Like there are so many people that I'm like, I would love to talk to, but I think it would actually probably be closer to today because I would want to understand. I think right now, if I was really thinking about it, it would probably be way more to do with the founding fathers. I would want to see at the turn of the world when everything was going on and as the recreation of new society was happening, what the mentality, the thought process was. I'd want to understand where they were coming from. I'd want to understand what they were thinking and how they were looking because we've just gotten so far a lot. And that obviously directly affects my everyday life, everything that I do. So I feel like I could pull a lot away from that that would help me, would help
Yep.
me share with others. So it would probably be some one of the founding fathers
Founding
to
fathers. Yeah,
understand the time and things like that.
absolutely. No, couldn't agree more. What is a challenge that you're facing in your business right now?
Hiring. I need really good people, but we don't hire for executioners. I'm hiring for growth. So I'm hiring people that can come in and they can help me build my business to where we need to take it. So we're at whatever, 300+ million dollars in assets, and we're trying to get to $1 billion in the next 2 years. And so these people that I have to bring on, these aren't, these are people that are going to fundamentally shape our company. And so these are hires that I have to be so particular about.
Hmm.
And I think I've been nervous about finding the right people, getting those right people in, and the lack of, I think, options available out there of good
Hmm.
people to bring in
Yeah.
that can do that. I think that's
Is
been a
that
pretty big thing.
is hiring something that it sounds like you're very involved with it personally.
Only the executives.
Gotcha.
So the executives. So that's what I'm talking about. The
Yep.
lower hiring is always it's really hard during times like this, but it's not as impactful.
Sure.
So, and I don't mean that as a degrading thing. I
Right.
mean, the people at the upper level, I'm hiring them for 20 years to make our company what it will be, not what it's
Right.
today. At the lower level, it's to keep things operating as today. And
Yeah.
so that it's a totally different type of person, and that's really difficult to find right now.
And those people you're hiring are going to be making decisions about hiring other people. I
Yes,
would I would
exactly.
presume.
They'll shape the
Um,
culture of the company. They're going to shape who we are.
yeah.
And culture isn't something you write down on a piece of paper. Culture is something that the people create because of who they are.
Absolutely, and it's huge within a company. What would you say? So, just real quickly, but we're again running long on time, short on the rest of our time. But where do you think we're headed in the markets? I mean, in general,
Next
just
next few years aren't going to be fun.
yeah,
They're not. We're going to have stagnation. We already do. Housing market's going to stagnate. People are going to stop moving. 99% of all mortgages are under today's interest rates. Of that, over 80% of every single mortgage in the United States is half of today's interest rate. We are going to see major challenges with the unprecedented amount of debt and money that has been printed. We have to get rid of it now. That's coming through a harsh restructuring and period. We put on so much, it won't happen. We are just trying to figure out a path now to get it. So our economy is transitioning from an old world to a new world. And the social problems within the United States that is caused at the end of these long-term debt cycles and what we're seeing as it plays out, it hits you on all sides. It hits from social, it hits economically, it hits politically, it hits the family. So when I say it's going to be hard, I mean that more than economically, because all like people think like social problems, right, are generate change, things like that. Social problems are actually more occurrences of economic things that are happening. So the
hmm
reason we got rid of slaves was due to economic problems. It wasn't due to enlightenment, right? No, people were not doing horrible, horrific things due to economic incentive stuff. And that's hard for us to imagine today, but it wasn't until the freedom that the Industrial Revolution brought on that not just in America, the whole world was really able to come off the necessary for human capital. These big transitionary times in the economy, world economies, right? They're difficult, they're hard. And so over the next years, we're moving through this transitionary period into something else. And we hope that we are going to do this with ease. And by ease, I just don't mean that it happens in wars, things like that, right? But we're now at the first time that we've had a major foreign power invade another one since the world wars. And this is that transition that we're talking about, right? So it's going to be rough. I'm an eternal optimistic. We will prevail. But because of that roughness, it's going to cause major social problems. And it's, we see it, we feel it today. It's not going away. It has more chances of getting worse than it does better. It's not going to get better anytime soon. And it has to accept it. It's going to take a while. We have to get rid of the money in the economy. We have to get back to a productive, functioning economy where people are actually working, we're producing, we're doing things, we're eliminating debt down, we're getting rid of this excess cash that has just been given by all the governments of the world that have just increased demand and cratered supply chains. And this is a mess, and it's going to take a while to get out of.
Are you guys doing anything in your business because of anything you can highlight specifically?
Yeah, we started restructuring acquisitions about 2 years ago. We said, I was big, I said, there's going to be inflation. Then when it was transitory inflation, I'm like, it's not transitory. So we started buying projects that were uniquely able to hedge against inflation and then take advantage of it. And that's been extraordinarily profitable for us. So it's been, we're moving towards that. So inflation, how we predict it, what we're looking at, we've completely changed our capital allocation, our projects, our building, what we're doing with investors over the last 3 years. For this, we took massive moves in 2009 and 10. After the Great Recession, we took another bunch of massive moves right when COVID hit and financial markets were shutting down for the first 3 months. We went on big buying sprees. And now after COVID and all the printing, we started to restructure where we're buying, why we're buying it. And we're moving forward in that way. The economy's shifting. We're building things that we've never done before because how demand's moving, how it's shifting, that we think is going to play really well during these times of unrest. We're betting on places that will benefit from unrest. We're seeing mass migration in the United States. So if there's unrest, there's certain parts of the United States. The United States is a tale of two cities. It's not going to be the same. The outcome of what's going to happen in certain states versus other states will be dramatically different. So we are very particular about where we're investing, where we're putting capital, where we're hiring people to avoid those locations.
Got it. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. That's really good. As we wrap up here, where can our listeners reach out to you, and anything else you want to plug before we sign off?
Yeah, I mean, you can check out the podcast. We talk about all of these things and more. We talk about how we're scaling our business. Instagram, I'm on there all the time. I'm trying to give, inside looks, back up. I do get on Twitter, not as much as I should. Twitter is kind of a mean world, but so,
it can be, yes, for sure.
Yeah, I haven't got it down yet. So, but
so what's the names of the two podcasts?
AJ Osborne. So AJ Osborne podcast, AJ Osborne on Instagram, and then self-storage income. So anyone that's like, I really want to learn about self-storage income is the education company behind self-storage, which once again, it's all like free. So it's YouTube, podcasts, and we talk only about self-storage, and we talk about everything.
Awesome. And the name of your book?
Growing Wealth in Self-Storage, The Investor's Guide to Growing Wealth in Self-Storage. It's the blue one on Amazon. It's
awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much, AJ. I know you've got 1,000 things to get to, so really appreciate it. Your story is incredible. I know it's going to be inspiring for somebody out there. So I know this hour was well worth it. So thanks a lot. I really appreciate it.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
And to our listeners out there, thank you for spending your most valuable resource with us, which is your time. Thanks, everyone. Take care.